Good evening, everyone. This is Scott Way. We're waiting for other commission members to join us, but welcome to those who've joined us so far. I see Commissioner Inglesby on the phone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Glad I can listen in.
Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. I'm with the City of San Marcos.
Great.
Okay, Scott, there we go. I was trying to unmute myself.
Looks like we just have two members so far, but we still have a few minutes before 6 o'clock. I know that Blanca Loyas texted and said she is on her way home, so she'll be a few minutes late. I haven't heard from other members, but I'm sure they'll be joining us shortly.
Scott, I didn't get any indication from anyone that they weren't going to make. So maybe everybody's just rushing to get home or wherever
Sure.
they're going to join.
Welcome, Lisa. I see our counselor, Mark Kennedy's joined us.
All right, Scott, I see a quorum. I see a quorum of names.
Well, great, Carolyn. I see you just joined us. Thank you. Let's give it just maybe a couple more minutes since we didn't hear of others who were not able to join us. Hey, Catherine. Well, I think that's enough for us to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Scott Way. I'm Chair of the Hayes County Parks and Open Space Commission. I'm joined by the other members. We've got Lori Olson on the call, Lisa Pruitt, Catherine Gonzalez, and anyone else yet? I think that's it. So I know that Blanca Loya said that she'll be a few minutes late, so she'll be joining us once we get started. And hopefully we'll also be joined by Scott Tomhave. So thank you all for joining this 10th meeting of the Hayes County Parks and Open Space Commission. And our first order of business is public comment. I don't know if anyone has joined this meeting in order to make public comment. You'll have 2 minutes if you just want to raise your hand, and be glad to hear from you.
Okay, I see Anna Juarez raising her hand. Scott?
Yes,
Great, Anna, would you like to?
yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd like to start by just thanking all of you on the committee for volunteering and serving our community. My name is Ana Juarez and I live in Precinct 1. I'm here to advocate for the City of San Marcos's proposal to purchase the old Quail Creek Country Club and convert it into a multi-purpose park. Recently released census reports indicate that Hayes County is the fastest growing county in Texas, so there's no doubt we need to conserve open space, especially land in a floodplain, and provide more opportunities for outdoor recreation and enjoyment. Unfortunately, Hayes County and San Marcos have long overlooked the east side in many ways, including public access to parks and our precious rivers. Quail Creek provides the perfect opportunity to begin to remediate this neglect. It is readily accessible via Highway 21, includes areas for safe parking, provides river access, and does not intrude upon adjoining neighborhoods. Eastern Hayes County is very different demographically and geographically from the rest of the county. Eastside residents have lower incomes, lower levels of education, lower levels of home ownership, and less wealth, resources, and power compared to those in the rest of the county. For example, 75% of students in the San Marcos CISD are economically disadvantaged, compared to 44% of those in the Hayes CISD. Because preservationists, conservationists, and park developers have previously focused much attention on the Hill Country and the San Marcos watershed area, and because densely populated urban areas need and deserve local parks and river access, it is now time to concentrate on the Blanco River and the eastern part of the county. Quail Creek perfectly fits this need, and it is essential that we preserve this parkland now. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I assume that we will be hearing more about this project. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
sir.
one of the presentations tonight.
Great, great. I saw Sandra Martinez. Sandra, did you want to provide public comment?
Yes, I would just like to agree with Anna. I think the Quail Creek Country Club, the site itself is beautiful. I've only been there a couple of times, but it's a beautiful place. It has river access. It would be an absolutely wonderful place for families and for birders and other nature lovers. And I think it would also be a great place for two of my favorite activities, pickleball and to have a community garden there. So I really hope you will consider this project.
Great, thank you, Sandra. Do we have anyone else?
Yes, Virginia Condi also has her hand up.
Virginia, welcome again.
Hello. This time I don't have a 3-year-old crawling on me. So I'm Virginia with the San Marcos River Foundation. I just wanted to provide y'all with an important update. Last week, the San Marcos City Council passed unanimously a resolution that stated that they would accept the Elsick Parkland possibly if it were offered to them. So I will send you the executed resolution once I receive that, once the mayor has signed it. And then also I wanted to let you guys know we are working on just a really informative list of all the properties that create the Greenbelt Loop that I talked about at your last meeting, so that you kind of know what they're worth and how much time has gone into the loop around the city and who has been involved in all of those transactions. So anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Super, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, well, hearing none, we'll move on to our third item on the agenda, which is to hear from our applicants on the various projects that they have applied for funding for. So that will be the bulk of the meeting. So James, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our first applicant.
All right, good evening, everyone. We've got a pretty full schedule for presentations. Those of you presenting, you'll have full control. If you have any technical difficulties, just let me know and I can control a PDF that I have of your presentation. So first up is the city of Wood Creek. Pat Rawlings, I know that I've been coordinating with you. If you've got other folks with you, if you don't mind introducing them, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, James. I'm just on by myself today. Of course, I have the support of all committee members in the city. Everyone in Wood Creek has become very enthused about this parks project possibility. A few years back, Wood Creek was mainly a retirement community. But over the past 5 years, we've had probably a couple of hundred more children move in to add to what we already had. And the community is rapidly changing. Let's see. So James, I just clicked share my screen, right? Okay, let's see. Oh, I can't share while you, okay, let's see, try again. Share and view slideshow. Okay, we're talking about a new start for the parks in Wood Creek because really we have mainly been a golf course community up in, during Wood Creek's whole incorporated existence. But as more and more young people move in, you end up needing places for them to go play and for the parents and grandparents to take them and to go play as well. We are proposing in the urban parks area, and we have seen a strong desire by the people here in the community together. And when you go out to a park and you see the kids playing, that's one element, but the way it then informally brings the parents of those kids together, it's a lot different than a child just going out and playing on a playscape in their backyard. And we're trying to provide opportunities that are a lot more accessible to kids that are ADA and the like. Right now, our full recreation equipment for the whole city of Wood Creek, you can see in this slide. We have a bocce ball court and 2 concrete picnic tables. And they're very nice and they're in a beautiful little park. But because we don't have a large area in Wood Creek to put parks, we're actually proposing for 3 different parks in the city. And this slide just talks about how our demographics are changing. And we even sold our last home here in Wood Creek to a couple that are working remotely up in Austin out of Wood Creek. And we know a number of other people that are doing the same. Everything that we're doing, we're being very careful to retrofit, like the bocce ball court and anything else we can, in an ADA manner. And then all of the equipment that we're looking at certainly meets and really exceeds the requirements for ADA. Because we don't have a single large area to do a park, we have basically spread out the stuff that we're looking at over 3 different locations: Augusta Park, Brook Hollow Park, and the Triangle. And each one of these areas has generally a different theme. Augusta Park is the more natural of the 3, and it will really cater to a wider range of ages. It's going to have some things where 5-year-olds and 95-year-olds can play together. I know that would need to be supervised, of course, but it's going to have a wide range of things. Brook Hollow Park is going to focus more on the small children, and we're looking at an elaborate playscape for that. And then the Triangle is the central gathering place that we're hoping for people to informally meet and play games, to be able to maybe have community events, music, Christmas caroling, little ad hoc concerts, people displaying their art and such. This is a view of the Triangle as it is right now. It's bordered on the east by Brook Hollow and on the south by Wood Creek Drive. It's just a large open space that is very accessible, and you can park around the periphery when you need to, and many people do during Halloween when you see cars just all over the place here. We're looking at a covered gazebo that's 16 feet in diameter, set on a concrete foundation. Excuse my voice, I've got allergies, so if I sound kind of like alfalfa, I can't help it. We are also looking at very heavy duty, low maintenance benches and bicycle racks and the like. And access to this will be very easy for most of the people in Wood Creek via just walking. We also can access it very easily by bicycles, lots of golf carts that people have here in town that can drive up, and then have cars as well. So it won't require a massive amount of parking like any of the other parks we have. The area that we're looking at for the playscape is on Brook Hollow, and it's a large, flat, shady area with a lot of nice trees that are spaced out that would enable us to place strategically the playground equipment that we're looking at, with parking up front, a playscape in the central clearing that you see in the back, and then swings at the very back corner. And if you look at the location of this park, it would be adjacent to a part of the quicksand golf course, which Hog Creek runs through. And this is never, ever used by the golf course for anything. And in discussions with the golf course superintendent, they have been very supportive of us spilling over onto this land and using it for people to be able to observe nature of a sometimes creek that is passing through the area. And we're looking at signage that talks about the way the different wet weather, sometimes creeks, live creeks, and how they all spill into Cypress Creek and then eventually spill into the Blanco and other areas. This is a close-up of the playscape we're talking about. It is 35 feet wide, and I think it's over 10 feet tall. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you can see all of the different ADA requirements and how they're met by the different things. So it has a lot of ADA accessibility built into it. I wanted you to see the size of it on this slide because the next slide, let's see, okay. The next slide is a very wide angle shot that makes it look relatively small, but it is 35 feet wide. And what we're looking at is not just the acquisition of the equipment, but the preparation of the site and the pathways and the like. We own all of the land where all of these parks are going to be. Okay, I'm trying to, whoops. Sorry. Come on. The swing set area has a couple of conventional swings, a toddler swing, and then it has a proprietary swing called an expression swing, which is kind of a neat new type of swing where an adult can sit on the normal swing and then a toddler or baby can sit in the other swing, and they can look at each other as they're swinging. My computer's not advancing automatically. Let's see. Okay, this is a view looking down Augusta Park. Augusta Park has a central rain garden in the middle that feeds into drainage that feeds down eventually under the road and down through adjacent lots into Hog Creek. And this has been, the development of this park was originally done some through grants from some other organizations. I think one of them was PEC. And when we were working with this park, we didn't want to have it depart much from the current theme that it already is with nature and appreciating the environment and how the environment works. Okay, let's see. Let's see, did I skip a slide? My advancing of my slides has gotten kind of glitchy. So anyway, we're looking at working around the existing bocce ball court. This park has a large blackjack oak adjacent to the bocce ball court that we're proposing putting in a large natural observation deck where kids can go up on this. They can climb around on the sides, but then you can actually go out on like a pier-like structure that goes out over the rain garden. And it will have signage that talks about the rain garden and also talks about the Cypress Creek watershed. Okay, let's see. Come on, there it is. Okay. So you can see the ramp in the upper left. It has a series of posts around it, and the posts are linked together with large industrial pipe that are all capped on the ends so they won't have sharp edges. And kids can climb all over that. And then there are climbing nets that are very heavy duty and low maintenance. You see in the lower left-hand corner some signage that will be on the signs out on the pier-like thing that you see on the right. Let's see here. And we also are going to have a couple of games there, a concrete ping pong table, which has got to be one of my absolute favorite things out of this whole deal, and then a concrete cornhole game. And these are very, very low maintenance, and they even had a shot of this concrete ping pong table with a Jeep's tire driven up on the stainless steel net, and it's not affecting it in any way. So what we are proposing, or what this will end up costing, is $270,000, of which Wood Creek is providing 25% of $67,000 of it. And that is in their current budget. I think it still is in a draft state, but there has been very strong support from the city council and the mayor on this. And the property is already owned by the city, and we just have a lot of enthusiasm about this in our community. So we really appreciate you guys listening to all of these presentations and serving on this board, serving on a parks board myself. I know there is a lot of work that you have to do behind the scenes, and it takes dedication and a lot of enthusiasm, and we really appreciate it. Here's our committee on the left. Myself, Karen Poe, Cody Abney, Ruth Ann Gilbert, and Jane Little have all been very supportive, and a lot of the work that you would see in the appendices came from their efforts. And there's my contact information if anyone needs to contact me. And I would be very happy to answer questions now.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you for your service to your community. Certainly appreciated. POSAC members, do y'all have any questions? And welcome, Blanca.
I don't have any, looks great.
Hi there. Are you?
Any questions for Pat? So Pat, I guess I'll have one question for you.
Okay.
I think I saw that there had been some recent postings for zoning changes to land within Wood Creek for parkland. Are the parcels proposed currently parkland, or is that something that you all are working on changing the zoning to parkland?
No, the city ended up rezoning all of these areas. Well, the triangle is already usable because it is considered actually part of the roadway. So it doesn't have to be considered a park. I guess it could eventually somehow be converted to one, but for what we're talking about doing, I think it's a de facto park. The Brook Hollow was changed by city ordinance into a park, and it is now a park. And then Augusta Park has been a park.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks. Have you all discussed, and this is off topic for your presentation tonight, but I know there's one proposal for additional parkland within, it may not, I don't know the exact boundaries of Wood Creek as a city, but there is proposed the De Cordova Trail. I don't know if you're familiar with that project.
I am.
Yeah, and whether, and something that it would be interesting to hear if there's any way in which some of these proposals could be worked together, and if some of what's being proposed might work in any of that land, and also to understand Wood Creek's take and your Parks Board's take on that project. It would be good to hear from you all, given its proximity to Wood Creek, if not in the city limits. I don't know where the boundaries are.
Well, in discussing it with various people with the city and other people that are aware of what's going on with that, the property near the entrance to Cypress Point, I think people refer to it as the Carson property, is 23 acres. And I think that acreage is all within the city limits of Wood Creek. And it's on the east side of Cypress Creek. And it's a very large open area. I remember in the proposal to POSAC, they were talking about breaking it up into the highlands with 7 acres at the top and then 16 acres at the bottom. And even though we have not directly collaborated on this, it is something that we are very, very aware of. And as we are just asking mainly for equipment, things to be constructed, they don't necessarily, they're not absolutely locked in. I mean, the current proposal within the city that I have run officially through the city council is for these things to go in the places that they're specified. But if we had access to a larger area, I would think that would be a very interesting topic of discussion with the city. And with whoever was making the decisions for that property, should it come to fruition.
Thank you.
Is that a good enough answer, James?
That was helpful. Thanks.
Okay.
And welcome, Scott Tom Have, one of our other members. Thanks for joining. Other questions for Pat?
I was asking what the acreage is of each of those 3 sites.
Augusta Park is a ½ acre. Triangle is a ½ acre, and the Brook Hollow is a ½ acre. So essentially, they're 3, pocket parks or larger pocket parks. But the beauty of where they're located is they're kind of distributed through the city, so it gives you a lot more walking and bicycling and golf cart, whatever, access to them than if they were more remote and you had to drive a bunch of cars and use a lot of parking space. But no, the Parks Board itself has, in the past, part of the, this is all building upon a master plan that was put together by the previous Parks Board. And it was alluding, if I'm not mistaken, to that is a goal in the next decade to try to look at additional large lands that were places like parts of the golf course, the Carson property, things like that. So this is very much in the structure of the plans that the master plan had put together for parks.
Great. Other questions for Pat? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
James, can we have our next presenter?
All right, so next up, we've got James Barton with the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District. James, let me know if you can take control. You should be able to now.
I hope you guys can see my screen. I've tried to share that with you.
You can see it.
Very good. I'm going to see if I can switch that over here. I've got two screens going. Chairman Way, thank you, and the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is James Barton, and I serve as Assistant Superintendent of Business and Support Services in San Marcos CISD. I also want to recognize Mr. Andrew Fernandez, our Executive Director of Communications, who is on, I guess, on this Zoom with us. Tonight, we're excited to bring you two proposals that improve opportunities for Hays County residents and add value to the students and families within San Marcos CISD. And here we go. Many of you know that San Marcos CISD serves approximately 8,000 students. I'd like to give Dr. Juarez credit for appropriately describing us as 75% economically disadvantaged. And she also described the east side of the district and the distinct needs that are there. To us, this means that we often have to plan to support students in a variety of ways to set them on pathways to success. It was at the urging of our Board of Trustees that the school district developed these proposals, and with their unanimous vote of approval and support that we submitted them to the Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee. Our core commitments are shaped by the school board, and they guide the district's focus on developing students, their academic potential, their social emotional, and their healthy habits. The first proposal this evening is to address the aging and seldom used softball field between Goodnight Middle School and Bonham Pre-Kindergarten on the frontage of Highway 123. We propose a partnership with Hays County through the POSAC process to reopen this space as a park open to the community. The softball field, its fencing and bleachers would be removed, and in its place, we would install pods of play and outdoor fitness equipment appropriate for a wide variety of ages. Along the frontage of Highway 123, we'll install iron fencing matching that of Bonham Pre-Kindergarten as an alternative and an attractive alternative to the chain link fencing. Finally, we want to make a space for a small parking area so that community members can safely access the park. Our proposal asks for a significant initial investment from Hays County through the POSAC Commission, but in return, the district commits to maintain this space from this point forward and to keep it open to the community. This proposal meets the goals of the Hays County Master Plan by opening up new recreational and park space for the community and by solidifying a partnership between San Marcos CISD and Hays County to manage the space for the future. You can see a little bit of drawing of where that is, but I think that everybody knows where that space is. Ultimately, the impact of our partnership will be evident to the surrounding community members who utilize the recreational space and those who travel on 123 and get to see the improvement. Our second proposal to the commission is to create a walking trail connecting Goodnight Middle School, Lamar Learning Center, Zavala Elementary School, the Child Development Center, the Transportation Annex, and Bonham Pre-Kindergarten, as they all sit on pretty much the same piece of land. We project a cost of $800,000 to provide a paved walkway connecting all these campuses and facilities with seating, signage, and educational opportunities along the way. Our partnership with Hays County would be to maintain this space into the future in return for support to begin the initiative now. Our second proposal aligns to the POSAC Master Plan goals by improving the community access to recreational space on district property and forming a partnership with San Marcos CISD to sustain it. In addition to the extended paved walking trail, this proposal adds sidewalks along Staples Road and Highway 123. It also proposes a small amphitheater or instructional space where campuses can bring students to learn in an outdoor, non-traditional setting. I'll give you a second to kind of digest. It's a fairly big loop through that property. Ultimately, San Marcos CISD is stronger when it's aligned and united with the community and the other governmental entities for the opportunity to improve the education and well-being of students. Thank you for the opportunity to present this vision to you tonight. And on behalf of the board president, Cantu, and our superintendent, Dr. Cardona, we look forward to the opportunity to build our partnership.
you. Thank you, James.
And I'd like to give
POSAC members, questions for James?
James, is there any way we could go back and look at that map with the sidewalks? I was just wondering, it looked like on Staples Road, the sidewalk, I was just wondering if that's connecting to the sidewalk that's already existing at Bonham?
It ultimately will. So I think, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. We're up here on Staples Road you referenced.
Yes.
So that one should connect. On 123, the lines, I think, is a little bit close to 123. We may have got a little artistic there. I think you could expect it a little bit closer to the sidewalk that's around the baseball diamond right now, softball field.
Okay, and then also along the backside of Bonham, closer to what's called Wallace Edition or Barrio Pescado. Would the sidewalk extend? Yeah, kind of. Would it connect there? I'm just thinking about kids walking from the neighborhood and kind of being able to walk to school.
If you mean this, that's on the frontage of the Bonham property, there is a small sidewalk there, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So the state what's there is going to connect.
Yeah, but in this stretch right here, there isn't one.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey there, I just have a quick question. This is Lori. I'm just curious as to the status of any bond funds you guys might have on hand with the district, or any contributions in that regard for some of these facilities.
We reviewed that with our board this last month, and so I guess the best way to describe that is our bond funds were approved by the voters for those projects that were established and for improving certain campuses. And so even if we have any residual funds, they have to go specifically to what the voters approved them for. So in this case, improving the grounds of that softball field would not be something that we could do because we didn't go to the voters for the opportunity to improve that softball field. And that's not one of our campuses. And the same thing with this outdoor walking space. Where we had done a renovation and we had made some planning in 2016 or 2017, and now we see an additional need. If we have any residual funds for a campus that was in the bond program, we can do that. But these projects would not apply there, and so we can't use the funds for that. It's a good question, though.
Yes, Catherine, I have a question about parking, and where would that be? Is that already existing parking?
We have a small turnaround, and I'm going to share my screen again. I know I keep dropping it off, but I can see you guys when you ask me questions if I don't share my screen. So we have a small turnaround right here, and we would turn that into a reasonably sized parking lot. We don't want to create a great deal of impervious cover, but we do want a place. We don't want people parking on the side of the road here on Broadway Street. We do want a place where people can park their cars, but it may be not much more than 8 or 10 cars.
This is Blanca again. James, would people be able to park in the campus parking lots, like after hours, after school hours?
Absolutely. It's a little bit of a walk from Bonham, but it's literally right across the Broadway from the Goodnight parking lot, and that would make a lot of sense too.
Thank you.
So does the school district own the tennis courts that are located there?
We do. We included that in our proposal to resurface them. Currently, they're accessible. I think we have them locked a small percentage of the time, but we would really like to open that up to everybody It's not something that either one of our campuses use on a regular basis. And I heard someone reference football earlier. I know that's getting popular. That may be part of just the restriping, although I know it's a little bit different court. We want the community to be able to use those spaces too.
And have you all spoken with the city of San Marcos in partnering on any of this project?
Not on this project. We've had some discussions, and I see Ms. Moyer on the call with our campus at Mendez, setting up some pickleball and the tennis courts there. And also they proposed an innovative idea in the field behind Mendez that would add some athletic fields.
Great. Other questions for James?
Thank you guys so much for the opportunity this evening.
Thank you. All right,
Okay.
James, if we want to move on to 3C, and as we move on to 3C, I wanted to remind everyone that this project is something that I have a personal interest in, both in working to preserve this property, as well as I have an investment in the property. And so I'm going to turn the reins over to Blanca. And in my role in terms of this meeting and any other meetings that we have related to this project is merely to provide factual information, but I will not be promoting the project at all. And really, you need to look to Great Springs Project, who's a partner in the project, in providing you as much information as they can. I can fill in if necessary, but really look to them for all of the information and to be the promoters of the project. So Blanca, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And I'm going to turn it over to James to introduce our next project.
Thank you, Blanca. So we've got Scott Parker with the Great Springs Project to talk about the Blanco Bend Ranch. Scott should be clear of anybody sharing, so feel free to
all right, I'm
try to
good.
take control.
There we go, I think. Are you all able to see my screen now?
Well, it's just,
There
there we
it
go.
goes.
Yeah.
There we go. All good.
Yeah, it's just taking a little time to boot up. Thank you all for joining this call this evening, and it's great to see familiar faces and some new faces as well. My name is Scott Parker. I'm the Land Transactions Director with Great Springs Project, and I'm very pleased this evening to bring before POSAC a really exciting conservation opportunity called the Blanco Bend Ranch. I think by now most of you are familiar with Great Springs Project, or you've heard of us. And the way that I like to express the organization is that we hold as our mission and vision the desire to connect our communities and to protect our springs. And the way that we plan to do that is to work with our nonprofit, municipal, local, state, federal partners to ultimately see 50,000 acres of land added to that which is already conserved, that will protect the water inflows into the 4 Great Springs on the I-35 corridor, as well as knitting together a 100+ mile trail from the Alamo to the Capitol, springboarding off some existing trails and closing the gaps in other locations. We believe that the Blanco Bend Ranch is important in both of these contexts. It supports both San Marcos Springs as well as Barton Springs, and it will provide future trail connectivity between the city of Kyle and the city of San Marcos. I wanted to walk you through a couple of, I think, interesting facts about this potential project. We are looking at 1,350 to 2,700 acres of undeveloped land, of which 1,080 to 2,160 could be available for a conservation easement. Now, I know that's a pretty big range, so I'm going to pause here and explain a little bit about why we have these two numbers that are fairly broadly separated. We have worked with a group of conservation buyers, as Scott Way mentioned, to acquire or see acquired a 50% interest in this 2,700 acre ranch. So right now we have a stake in this property of 1,350 acres. In the longer view, we hope to negotiate for the acquisition of the remaining 1,350 acres to bring the total project size to 2,700. If we are able to do that, that's the optimal scenario. If it takes us a little time to do that, we're going to be looking for an amicable way to divide the property such that the 1,350 acres is defined and the area for a conservation easement would be defined as well. The ranch is fully located over the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone. And I think the primary feature and primary draw of this property is the fact that it has a little over 2.5 miles of frontage on the Blanco River, sort of from the Oxbow where the Halifax Ranch is and the river turns abruptly south. Within the property, given its scope and size, we've identified a little less than 20 miles of tributaries and streams, ponds, and there is one spring on the property as well. Through dye testing conducted by City of Austin, there's an interesting way that the aquifer works during times of drought. During times of drought, which we've all seen and suffered through, the Blanco River will actually disappear. And when it does, we found through dye tracing, or City of Austin has, that those waters that are sinking show up in Barton Springs. Now, how the aquifer works remains a beautiful mystery to all of us, but the fact of the matter is that this property and the Blanco River support both San Marcos and Barton Springs. We've identified through a recent biologic survey that there is substantial potential golden cheek warbler habitat on the property. And I'm saying potential because this is not the time of year that we can identify nesting birds. But when we get to a slide on the habitat area and where known golden cheek warblers have nested, it seems very promising that there is golden cheek warbler habitat on this property, which can of course translate into mitigation credits for Hays County. It's also just got an interesting history. This was the home of the Comanche. This is where early settlers had a wagon train that went to the village of Wimberley. This is where guano was harvested from the many caves along the bluffs to support the munitions for the Confederate Army during the Civil War. And in a more peaceful manner, there are some historic structures, including a mill from the 1860s, still on site. When we think about the public benefits, first and foremost is what this property helps support relative to recharge into the Edwards Aquifer and the karst features that are on it, which of course inform the quality and quantity of the water that ends up in the aquifer and the communities and the drinking water that the aquifer supports. When we're able to confirm that there's golden cheek warbler habitat and nesting birds on the property, and that would likely be through surveys that typically February through April, there's the opportunity to generate up to $10 million or more of golden cheek warbler mitigation credits from this property. Our conservation buyers, I want to take us on a slight detour from the bullet point here. I think this is an interesting place where they're coming from. These buyers that have formed a partnership and have acquired the 50% interest in the property now are not looking to capitalize on the fact that this property has been annexed into the city of Kyle and has the potential for significant development up to 9,000 units. The rationale for this partnership's acquisition of the property is to see it protected. That is the ultimate rationale. It's not for a giant private ranch or anything along those lines. So the goal here is to see the property protected up to 80% of it through conservation easements, with the remaining 20% being large lots for individual private properties. Also desirous of including a trail corridor that would be later codified into a trail easement that could offer connectivity between the city of Kyle and city of San Marcos. This property has a low water crossing where Cypress Road ends, which is just literally off the main street of downtown Kyle. And we believe we can connect it through the Emerald Crown Trail south to city of San Marcos. As all of us know, when we see summertime activities, ecotourism is a big part of the economy for Hays County. And again, supporting the San Marcos River, supporting the Blanco River is a big part of that. Further, Great Springs project envisions a completed trail network and additional protected lands by 2036. And to that end, we did an economic benefits report that established that upon completion of this trail network and additional protected lands, Hays County could see up to nearly $24 million annually in economic benefits from ecotourism, from health benefits, from transportation. We are exploring, and we are in the early stages of talking with the city of Austin about potentially providing financial support to this project. This is a little bit outside of city of Austin's typical aquifer area of interest, but because of that connectivity to Barton Springs, it is of great interest. And as some of you know, Proposition D, City of Austin passed, I think it was 2 years ago now, and it has funding for protection of watersheds and watershed resources and springs. So this is an early conversation, no commitments as yet, but we see a great opportunity here for a partnership between City of Austin and Hays County. And lastly, the protection of the property would in effect remove 9,000 rooftops that are planned under a master plan community scenario and a development agreement with the city of Kyle. And not only does this reduce the non-point source pollution that would inevitably filter into the aquifer and into the Blanco, it also represents a significant reduction in those kind of ongoing infrastructure costs, water supply, emergency services, police services, roads and road maintenance for Hays County. This map is just a broad locator. The property, as you can see, is identified in sort of a brick red color. You can see that it is in the midst of a number of other lands and properties and ranches that are protected under conservation easements immediately to the west of the city of Kyle, bounded on the north by the Blanco River and just due north of downtown San Marcos. On a closer and topographic level, you can get a better idea of where this property is situated. That point on the property at the top of the screen, the most northerly point is just across the river from the Halifax Ranch, which is protected under a conservation easement. The little jutting point that looks sort of like a boot coming off on the right side of the property is where Cypress Road connects to the ranch. When we look at it, in addition just to the topography, but we look at aerial imagery, you can see by those blue dotted lines that crisscross the property that there are a number of unnamed streams and tributaries that are flowing into the Blanco off of the Blanco Bend Ranch. The dotted yellow lines indicate existing ranch roads on the property, and those could potentially be trail routes as we establish the best way to route a trail from east to west, or actually south to San Marcos. Again, in a sort of a context view, the heavy blue line is the Blanco River. You can see where it makes that sharp turn to the south, which is the northern boundary of the tract. The light blue that you see indicated on this map is the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. It's fully within that zone, and the frontage along the Blanco River, as I mentioned before, is about 2.5 miles. This is the most recent survey that we've received on potential golden cheek warbler habitat indicated in green. And you can see it comprises the majority of the property. Now, just off to the right of the slide, you see a whole series of connected small red dots. That is where golden cheek warbler nesting and bird sightings have occurred. So as I mentioned before, and I think my friend Jenny Blair is on this call, bird surveys typically happen in early spring, and we would want to be doing a bird survey at that point to determine whether or not there are nesting warblers on this property, but the habitat in and of itself is there. Excuse me. And as such, in the context of a 2,700 acre ranch, this could provide somewhere just above 1,800 acres to 2,600 acres of potential habitat and mitigation credits for Hays County. Karst is on everyone's mind because of its function in feeding the aquifer, which in turn, of course, feeds our water supplies and drinking water supplies. Here in light gray, you can see that the property has significant karst features on the property. And if you look very closely, I don't know if my cursor shows up on the screen or not, there is a spring on the property at this location that feeds a fairly substantial tank or pond that you'll see in an image in just a moment. So there's significant karst on this property that is important to the recharge of the aquifer. It's the part everyone likes, pretty pictures. And here you see the Blanco with the bluffs behind it. This is literally a slice of Texas's geologic history in a scenario like this. And it's not all that common to find, especially along this beautiful and placid river. From the uplands, there are significant views from almost every direction. It has a mix of ash juniper, as you saw in the habitat slide, as well as oaks and grasslands and savannas. This is the spring, excuse me, that is located at the far eastern edge of the property, and you can see it supports the tank or the pond further in the distance. And this is indicative of the kind of water resources that we have found on the property. Again, sort of a slice of geology along some of the higher bluffs that provide extraordinary vistas, and relative to a trail, if the topography would permit it, it could also be an extraordinary recreational opportunity. And throughout the property, you see these areas where there's clearly recharge going on across the property under that tree trunk that you can see there, and as the water travels downhill over the limestone, it of course filters down. And this is located all across the Blanco Bend Ranch. So in summary, this is truly an extraordinary conservation opportunity. I cannot say for a fact that there is no larger privately held available property on the I-35 corridor, particularly within literally walking distance of the city of Kyle. This is the kind of property that, being annexed into the city and under a development agreement, would ultimately be lost to development. And once it's gone, it's gone. As I described, there are significant watershed, aquifer, and recharge and habitat values across the property. It's very important for the continued health of San Marcos Springs, as well as during times of drought to Barton Springs. With the reservation of a trail corridor that would ultimately be a trail easement, it would provide for accessible, healthful outdoor recreation. And we're thinking hike and bike trails here. Ultimately, the goal is to see 80% of the property protected through a conservation easement. This would expand, as you saw on this protected lands map, upon an existing network of protected lands and connectivity to existing trails. It is under a City of Kyle development agreement from May of 2016, fully permitted as a very significant master plan community, which heightens the element of risk here. So I want to thank you all for your support and your interest in this, and certainly am open to the questions that I can answer now, and if I can't answer them, I'll get the answers to you.
Thank you, Scott. That is a significant opportunity for conservation. POSAC members, questions?
Blanca, this is Scott. Sorry to be so loud here if there's noise in the background, but curious, public access, like by percentage, how many acres, how much public access would be available to the general public?
That's a good question, Scott. And the good response, I think, is that with the partnership that now owns this interest in the property, they are looking to, as I said, not just protect the land, but provide for public benefit. I think they're open to discussion on what seems like the right amount, but certainly it is not a property that would be closed to the public. The intent is to make sure that there are strong public benefits here on acreage. I think that's just to be determined as we move forward.
So can you tell me how much percentage of the land would be available to public access, please?
Well, I don't know if I can actually answer that for you right now, Scott. I know that we're talking about a trail corridor across the property, and how much area that covers is not clear because we don't have the trail route yet, but our landowner partner is very willing to determine the best route and the best amount of public access.
Hey, Scott, this is Lori. So you are asking basically to acquire an easement on the property, and do you have an ask amount, and what percentage of the total cost do you think that is?
Yeah, we are asking in the project information form and request of POSAC for $7 million for the acquisition of conservation easements over the property. We are finalizing before and after appraisals on this, but to make it simple this time of day, if we have but $7 million to work with, which is still a substantial amount of money, and we assume there's a eased value of 10, then we're at 700 acres. If we're able to bring the city of Austin in as a partner on this on a one-to-one level, and again, that's an early conversation, that would translate to $14 million and approximately 1,400 acres of eased lands. Now, it's also important to note, and I want to share this, that depending on how values work out by appraisal, the partnership that holds the interest in the property would consider making some amount of easement, donation of conservation easement value on the property as we learn more about the before and after values.
Then do you have, I'm sorry, just a follow-up question is, do you have the initial 700 acres identified on the map?
We do not. That would be obviously we want to see it along the Blanco and the important tributaries into the Blanco in and around karst features. So just in general, most of us know you find the best habitat and the best resources along these riverine kind of landscapes, and that would be the first and most important choice for where the easement would be located.
Is the fee simple interest in the property owned by you guys, or who owns that fee simple?
The fee simple is owned by now a 50% interest in the conservation buyers that have just acquired that 50% interest, and then there are two additional 25% interests in the property with whom we are beginning discussions about the acquisition of their undivided interest, so that ultimately we would have fee acquisition of the entire 2,700 acres. If we're not successful in bringing those two other 25% interests in, then we will work to identify a way to convert the 50% fee interest into undivided interest into 1,350 fee acres. it's a fluid dynamic, and I know that I'm presenting to you all a project that is a little out of the norm. And that's what makes it exciting and challenging. But we know what is we have a 50% interest in this property, and we're working toward a 100% interest in the property.
Scott, the development agreement, was that with the two properties that are still under negotiation, the two owners of 25% each?
Yes, so the development agreement covered the entire 2,700 acres of land. So your interest would be according to that then.
So if y'all don't get the full amount, then 50% of this property could be developed at the rate that, you know, the 9,000 living units, half of that, for example?
I think, Catherine, that could be a conceivable risk. On the other hand, it changes the bottom line for a developer on the property because they're losing half of the rooftops. And it then begs the question about, is it as viable for development if it's reduced to 1,350 acres for development and 1,350 acres for conservation?
And at one point in your presentation, I think you were suggesting the trail would be the most desirable location would be paralleling the Blanco River.
Yes. So if I can go back to my.
That would be amenable to the easement purchasers partnership now?
Yes, I'm going to say a conditional yes, Catherine, because there's some rugged topography in here. And we would want to make sure that we're creating a trail that is safe for all users. And you can see on this topographic map, particularly up in here, it gets quite steep. So while we have not identified as yet a trail corridor beyond saying there will be one and then turn it into a easement, there is a subdivision up here. There are all those ranch roads that crisscross the property through here. But I think a lot of people would enjoy where it is safe and where topography permits it to have a recreational trail and a trail easement along the Blanco.
I agree with that completely. Thanks.
How long of a trail would that be? Because this doesn't really connect to anything else. So just in and of itself, how long of a trail is that?
Lori, right now, if we were to say that there's a trail along the Blanco, that's 2.5 miles, and it connects to Cypress Road here, which is a public roadway. If we follow some of these old ranch roads and exit the property over here, where it's on Oak Grove Road, then I don't know what our mileage in trails there is. It just sort of depends on how the trail is routed. And we would want to, again, be sensitive to both, well, to habitat, to karst, and also just the limitations of topography. A very high point here and some high points in here. So it's a trail that's going to follow to some extent topography, and that's going to determine its length.
So I'll ask again, Scott. Appreciate your presentation. What by percentage in projected out, like how much percentage of this land would be available to public access?
Scott, I appreciate your question and also the intent and direction of your question. And I don't want to mislead everyone and say, well, it would be 10% of the property or 5% of the property. I know in conversations with our conservation partnership on this, that the intent is there to provide for public access and public use and public benefit. Scott Way, I don't know if on a factual level, if you're able to help answer this question beyond where I'm able to go with it right now.
No, I don't think that's known yet because the trail route hasn't been established and the size of the trail easement. I think that further discussions also may be had with the city of Kyle if there's any parkland that's they're interested in the property. Again, it is a fluid situation. This only came up, the availability of this opportunity only came up a couple of months ago and took a several months to get together. So we're still working on it.
I can appreciate that. I understand. I just think, the public needs to know, if we're gonna, score this and evaluate it, we need to know that answer.
Scott, I'll make a commitment to work with our conservation partners to see if we can come up with some, at least range that we can provide to you in advance of your scoring on the project.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, well, we look forward to the potential answer or feedback on that question that Scott presented. Are there any other questions from our POSAC members? Okay, well, I will thank you again, Scott, for your presentation, and I will turn it over to James for our next presenter.
Thank you, Blanca. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so the last group we've got is the City of San Marcos. I see we've got Drew Wells, Jamie Lee Case, Bert Strodeman, and maybe a few other folks. Drew or Jamie, who's the ringleader on your side?
That would be me.
I'll turn it over to y'all, give y'all full control. Let me know if you have any issues, if you want to introduce all your folks or however you want to have it. The presentation is yours now.
Thank you so much, James. Well, thank you all so much for having us tonight. We're actually going to begin with the Purgatory Creek Improvements Project. Mr. John Espinosa is going to be providing you that presentation.
Can y'all hear me? I guess, can I see my presentation now? Yes, good. Good evening. My name is John Espinosa. I'm an engineer with the City of San Marcos, and I'm here to give you a presentation regarding the Purgatory Creek improvements, easements, and right-of-way acquisition. But before I get started, I do want to acknowledge Lori Moyer. She's also on, and she is, I guess, one of the original thoughts for this project, but she is also here. And going on, basically what I want to do is kind of give you the agenda of the presentation, including the project purpose, project elements, why select this project, and questions. The primary purpose is we're requesting $2.5 million to acquire easements right away along Purgatory Creek. We're considering comprehensive plans that the city has developed, the Vision Sound SMTX comprehensive plan rewrite, greenway and trail plans, park master plans. We're considering the Purgatory Creek Improvements Project, which includes natural channel design, flood mitigation, water quality, public space improvements, and then it's also going to be a multi-function corridors from connectivity, green spaces, riparian, flood mitigation, water quality, and then also considers public and input support. This is just as a view of what we consider the San Marcos Loop Trail. It's kind of showing, if you can see my cursor down, this is the section of Purgatory Creek that we're interested in now. And this kind of gives you a view how this would connect all along the trails along San Marcos. In addition, this is another view from the city's proposed greenway plans. Here is the lower Purgatory Creek. Over here, we're talking about, here's Purgatory Creek going through here, and it all outfalls towards the San Marcos River, Bicentennial Park, and Children's Park in this area. I'm going to start off first with the Purgatory Creek Improvement Project. Basically, what this done, we have conducted a preliminary engineering report. We did this back in March of 2019, and right now we have developed 30% levels of design. Major components of this is the connectivity of parks to the community and open spaces with multi-use trails, going to be used for flood mitigation. We're using a natural channel design. We're considering riparian and prairie restoration, vegetation management, improving water quality, infrastructure modifications, permitting, public easement, and easement and right-of-way requirements. We have some design documents back in January 21. Basically, what we have here, this is showing the phase one area. The phase one area consists from near Johnson area, Johnson Avenue towards the San Marcos River. And then the second phase two area considers from near Wonder World down to the phase two near Johnson Avenue. In the phase one area for this project, we've done the preliminary engineering report. We got 30% designs. In the phase two area, we have conceptual designs. Going on for the project itself, for the phase one area, we're looking at upgrading different bridges along the Purgatory Creek. Those are the different locations. We're considering modifying the channel underneath either Guadalupe Street or the railroad. We're also looking at how the flow goes into the San Marcos River to make sure we don't make any increases in considering sediment. What we have now, we have during low normal conditions, water continues going this general direction, goes through, flows that direction. During high flow conditions, we have a spillway that's going to go over and go towards the San Marcos River. Here, what we also have, the spillways showing the locations. We're going through the portion through Children's Park. In addition, as part of this project, we're going to create some aquatic sites, and I will show you a little schematic of that later. We're also looking at preserving natural areas, enhancing natural areas, and tree preservation. So this is kind of general locations of natural growth along Purgatory Creek and how we got to work with that. And then we're also considering there's a San Marcos Cotton Compress Company building structure back in this area that we got to consider. Then we're also considering the natural drains that are going towards Purgatory Creek, how they impact the project. We're also looking at pedestrian utility bridges. And then this is also what we're this part of phase. We're looking at a schematic view of the trail locations, how they will cross the creek itself. And then we're also, but this started mainly as a flood mitigation project, but we're also looking at water quality and improved public spaces. This is a typical cross section along the phase one area. In the middle part here, this will be a pilot channel going through the bottom part over here. We would have a trail system coming back over on the sides. We would have natural vegetation. We're looking at possibly 140-foot bottom-width channel. Then we're looking at side slopes, 4-to-1, 3-to-1, into vertical walls. We're looking, making sure that drainage will drain towards the pilot channel in the middle part. We're looking at low and high water benches. This is showing what happens during flooding events. Water's in the channel, in the pilot channel at the bottom. As the flood occurs, water will increase and cover this whole area. And we're showing this kind of a outline of people standing there, and this how deep it would be. In addition, we're talking about natural channel designs. We're looking at creating said earlier, as aquatic sites. We would have pools, and this is the way that we would create those type of facilities. We're also looking at keeping trees and vegetation along the side. We're also looking at from that San Marcos River outfall. This is an important portion where we would, during normal conditions, water would continue flowing down Purgatory Creek, go towards Bicentennial Park, and then goes into outfalls in San Marcos River. During high flow conditions, we would construct a new diversion channel, and then it will go towards us San Marcos River. So it will be function two ways. And then we're also, this is kind of a view, cross-section view, how we would connect the San Marcos River and the Purgatory Creek. We're also considering there's an existing trails that are going along the San Marcos River. They're currently worked in this area. They're currently working on going underneath the railroad. So we would tie into those particular projects. Then we're also looking at all the various permitting. I think any permitting you would think you would need for a project, we are acquiring as part of this project, including we would also have a major coordination with the Union Pacific Railroad. Trail considerations, the big part of this, because connectivity with other trails, connectivity with green spaces, multi-use path where it could be used for either walking, bicycles, how it's going to be accessed from the streets. I mentioned other trails, access to the parks and the river, ADA compliance, slopes and surfaces, maintenance, safety, and way finding. part of this project, what we've done, we also require property acquisitions and drainage easements. And we've kind of outlined the areas. The phase 1 area, we got more information on that. The phase 2 area, what we're doing now, we're mainly going to Purgatory Creek improvement projects. We have conceptual designs. We're going to have trails along the existing Purgatory Creek South Bank. This with the flood mitigation is in different areas, and then we got ongoing permitting efforts. In addition, for this phase 2 area, we are working through with the San Marcos River Foundation, in which they received a grant from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, and we're working on conducting or constructing a natural trail along there. In addition, we've got private citizens input. This is a map showing in the phase 1 area where we've identified the areas we need easements and right-of-ways, going all the way from different parts along Purgatory Creek from San Marcos River back towards near Johnson Avenue. In the phase 2 area, we have a more conceptual area where we're looking at requiring easements along the south banks of Purgatory Creek. This is where the trails will be coming into. Now in this one, this map is really just showing you the location, how this project fits into the Hays County precinct maps. We're this general area through here, so we cover 3 of the precincts through there. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we've have public input. This is a picture, in fact, where we had there was a function in the city a couple of weeks ago, and we actually got input, and it was sponsored by Texas State University, and there was a lot of interest going on in that particular function event there. In addition, this is just a conceptual design where the phase 1 area, we're looking at Children's Park, Purgatory Creek. We would have the trails along the natural channel and then going on, and this is the sections of there. So what is the next steps? Our next step is to acquire easements right away, continue, this continuing basis vegetation management plan. One thing we've identified at this time, that if we go in and start removing this, what we consider invasive vegetation, it will help us in the future where this vegetation will not come back. So we're trying to start that process now. We're continuing the permitting process. For the phase 1 area between Johnson area, San Marcos River, and I do have here funding dependent. We want to complete designs and hopefully start construction by 2023. The phase 2 area between Wonderwell area and Johnson Avenue, we will continue the trails working with San Marcos River Foundation, and funding dependent, we will design the next part of the flood mitigation project and things like that. Construction possibly starting in 2025. In summary, we are requesting funds to acquire easements right away along Purgatory Creek. We're considering a comprehensive plan, Vision SMTX comprehensive plan rewrite. We're considering greenway and trail plans, parks master plans, and we're also considering the Purgatory Creek improvement project. One thing that's important to note is connectivity, multifunction corridors. We'll connect the San Marcos River to Purgatory Creek natural area. Then we also were connecting to the historic cultural neighborhood from Dunbar, Victory Gardens, and East Guadalupe. Then we will also create a green space, riparian, wildlife, trails, flood mitigation, and water quality improvements. And then why select this project? Well, first thing is it secures and protects land for connectivity. And I mentioned from San Marcos River, Purgatory Creek natural area, historic areas, green space trails, flood mitigation. But I think one thing that I kind of failed to mention earlier, all of this is located within an urban area. So by us getting this land, we've kind of conserved it for for this use, and so for future development. This was also enhance our trail plans, connecting with trail plans going along the San Marcos River. We're working with our parks department and other trails up there in the natural area. And then we'll continue working with the nonprofit groups. We're currently working, as mentioned earlier, the San Marcos River Foundation, and getting input from citizens. We're also working with private citizens that own property along the Purgatory, and how we could work with them to make this project happen. Then this supports also 2 other POSAC projects. We've listed the Purgatory Creek area open space and clean water preserve project, and also the San Marcos River recharge land project. And then we will also consider input and support. And this time, that is a kind of quick summary of our Purgatory Creek improvement project. And I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Good. This is Lori Moyer. Could I just add a couple comments to John's presentation? John is the project manager and has the most detailed knowledge on your specific question.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I can see my picture looks really weird.
But we had Lori was making a comment.
I'll be very quick. I think one question the group might ask is, well, if the city is looking at this project, then why are we looking for POSAC funding? And one thing that John does not indicate is the phase one project itself is probably in the realm of $30 million. And continuing on that with phase two, to implement all of that is maybe another equal amount. Our goal is to go to a bond election, but financially, any community, and particularly one in San Marcos, needs to think about the ability of the community to actually approve and accept those bond increases. So what's vitally important for us is that we preserve this corridor to allow this to occur in the future. It not only provides all the connectivity that John described, but it also provides a future benefit to remove some economically disadvantaged neighborhoods out of the floodplain or improve their floodplain resiliency. And then I guess one other thing that I was going to add that I've now just completely lost, and I apologize. If I recall, I will tell you, but otherwise I'll let you get to questions. I'm sorry.
The way you described the project, I think it would be something that the city could certainly seek funding through the Water Development Board. And that type of funding for helping disadvantaged communities that may be at flood mitigation risk often can lead to some of that funding from the Water Development Board to be forgiven.
And we have pursued Water Development Board funding. That was one of our large land conservation acquisitions that occurred on the very first map. And as a disadvantaged community, we are eligible for, we've received up to 45% forgiveness. But again, that was 45% forgiveness on a $2 million project. How much we would be able to get forgiven on something of this size is a little bit harder to achieve. And so our goal is to really address every avenue to ultimately do the entire project. But being able to go ahead and find some additional funding to move forward with right-of-way and easement acquisition is really vitally important. And I remembered what I was going to add is we have invested through the permitting and the preliminary design, all the work thus far. The city has invested about that same amount of money through our drainage utility. So we are stretched very thin right now to keep this project going, which is why we wanted to pursue this avenue with POSAC.
Thank you.
Scott.
Members of POSAC, questions for the team?
Scott, one thing, and let me add, if it's not clear, the PIF they're requesting 2.5 million. And Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, or John, but
That's correct, sir. Yes,
straight
sir.
from the PIF.
Yes, sir.
That's helpful. Thanks.
I have a
Catherine.
question. If y'all are only asking for 2.5 million, but they're two $30 million projects, how would the $2.5 million help you if we want to have these projects completed within 5 years?
Well, I'll start with that answer there. It would lay out the land, secure the land for the project itself. That's a big part. I think what we're working with, I know in the phase one area, we've already identified, for example, we talked about connectivity in the trails. We've already laid out the alignments of the trails. In the phase 2 area, we've laid out the alignments for the trails in those areas. So by acquiring, by getting the funding for what we're requesting, it would help us secure the land for that particular project. As we go in the future, we're looking at, as Lori mentioned, we were investigating different other funding sources. We're looking at what we will need to do for utilities, bridges. Is there some other funding mechanism we could also look at? So that's what our ideas. As mentioned also, we're working with the phase 2 area with San Marcos River Foundation. They have acquired a grant that we have to do something within a couple of years here. And we're working with them working on that particular phase of the project.
Is that for land acquisition as well?
Yes, but part of that is mainly for actually doing the trails and any other additional work that we would have to do on our side for the city of San Marcos.
So basically the slideshow that you presented is just the big picture long-term, but for right
Yes.
now, you're really looking at that 2.5 million for land acquisition for
That's
trail
correct. The
creation.
very beginning is through the acquisition of land.
Perfect. Okay.
My original goal was identify as part of the project that I wanted to identify the space that would be required for all of the ideas, needs for the city of San Marcos, including from flood mitigation, connectivity, water quality, natural grow areas, things like that. So, well, at least we have the space to do that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, so the public, I just want to reiterate, the public input was awesome, by the way. The budget at 2.5 million, that's awesome too. Connect with other projects. You did a great job.
Well, I think the public input is an important part of this. We've already had several public meetings already with the, sending what our plans are, what we want to do. We started listening to what they want. There's some questions, for example, when we do the spillway or a high diversion channel in San Marcos River. What if we put some type of mechanism where we could get a wheelchair down there for somebody to go into the river? So that's something that we're looking at. I think we're working with our Parks Department. They're aware of that. So there's different things that we're trying to work with. And again, get acquisition of the land, the easements, the right of way, identify the space, and then there's all these opportunities what you can do with it in an urban area.
The easements are what I'm concerned about, obviously, but overall, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Public input is great. Right away, easements, like, do you have a budget for that?
The money that we are acquiring through our consultant in the first phase 1 area, they did the detailed analysis. We outlining the land or the easements and right of ways required. So we estimated how much we would require to do the actual process and surveying and all the other required costs. So those are what we estimated for both phase 1 and phase 2 areas.
Are those at 30 million or?
No, that would be, it would be less. The 2.5 million is not included in the 30 million. Well, maybe part of it is. I say that right.
Okay, so please clarify that.
Okay.
So is 2.5 million for the project and then 30 million for the easements and the right of way that you need to do the project?
No, it would be 2.5 million for the easements and right of way, and 30 million would be for the other parts of the project itself, from the flood mitigation, changes to bridges, utilities, and other things we've identified as part of that project.
Thank you.
But for clarification, if you were to get the 2.5 million and get the acquisition for the easements and the land, you could still start with the project without doing the bridges and all the other things.
That is correct. Now, that's one
Okay.
thing we're looking at now. We're looking at the project itself to figure out what is the best options.
Okay.
How can we fund it? How can we construct it? Very important.
So you don't need the $30 million for bridge improvements and everything else in order to make the trail system and the land acquisition
That is
completed?
correct. That is
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
What is the category the PIF is submitted under? Urban or trail or open space?
I originally looked at it almost everything, but there is some, not sure what the exact final decision
It was
was.
submitted under connectivity.
Connectivity.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like y'all have already thought of a lot of potential funding sources for this project, which I appreciate. So I'm just curious, are any of those funds coming from community block improvement grants or any CBG DR funds?
Dora, do you want to answer that? Do you want me?
No, Blanca, they are not. These were not identified as locations for the DR funds, nor the mitigation funds are predominantly allocated towards the Blanco Gardens area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, even maybe because it's next to like Victory Gardens, are there anything like potentially there for community block improvement grants?
Typically, because of the housing need is so high in San Marcos for affordable housing, most of the CDBG grant funds have gone towards meeting that need. We've had some small park improvements, as you're probably aware, historically, but not to this extent for using those funds.
Okay, just curious. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, John.
Sure.
Any other questions before we move on to the next project? All right. Thank you. Why don't you lead us through the next presentation that you all have?
Thank you all so much. So my name is Jamie Lee Case. I am the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. Great to see a lot of familiar faces and see some unfamiliar faces too. So excited to be here and present to you all this evening. So the first one that I'm going to start with is our East Side Park project here. So let me hit start. Okay, are y'all able to see that? Looking for some, okay, good deal. Thank you so much. Okay, so just this evening, I'm going to walk you all through our project purpose and need, the project location, project details and funding, and then we'll get to your questions. So the purpose and need, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to move my little video. There we go. Okay, so the purpose and need: improving accessibility to various passive or active recreation amenities and multi-purpose trails on the east side of San Marcos, while providing conservation and flood mitigation opportunities along the Blanco River. This property is approximately 175 acres of mostly undeveloped land near other city-owned properties. This would accomplish many action items identified within the City of San Marcos's 2019 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. As was mentioned, this is the Quail Creek Golf Course property. It is adjacent to Quail Hollow, which lays just outside of the city limits in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. It is next to the Blanco River Village, which is a bedroom community, single family community within the City of San Marcos city limits and across from our current Gary softball complex. Here is a little bit better topography picture for you. You can see the existing trail system that already exists. That is golf cart path. This also does have tennis courts, a swimming pool, parking, but we can get into all of that in just a second. So the project details, we're requesting $10.5 million to be used for acquisition of approximately 175 acres, give or take, and current facilities and amenities. This also would go towards master planning and design of the regional East Side Park, because we want to include the community and hear what they want in that area. Acquiring this property provides the following benefits: a regional park, accessing to the underserved area of our community on the east side. We currently have several neighborhood parks, but out of, I believe it's the 20, I think we have 26 parks in our system. Only about 5 of those are actually on the east side. This would provide some flood mitigation opportunities because it is there along the Blanco River. This is part of the Blanco River that actually does not de-water on a regular basis. There would be water quality protection opportunities and protection of the land from future development as well. The project does qualify for Community Development Block Grant flood mitigation funding, but I need to say that the City Council has not discussed that opportunity as of yet. So none of those funds have been allocated towards this project. This is just letting you guys know that it would qualify as land preservation, for the land preservation category within the CDBG MIT program, sorry. City Council, like I said, has not discussed this opportunity to date. Anticipated schedule, following funding issuance, we would work with the property owner on the closing of the property by the end of the year, and then begin our request for proposals for our master planning and design, which we anticipate would take 6 months, working with our purchasing department. And then once we get it back, we would begin our process. We would also be going to the voters for a 2022 bond election for further park development. And then that is all that I have. I will be happy to take any of your questions.
So does the city currently have the property under contract? What's the status of it?
We do not currently have it under contract. We are currently in negotiations. But the property owner does want this to be parkland.
How much of it is in the floodplain?
I don't have the exact acreage. In the 2015 flood, the majority of it was flooded, with the exception of the actual clubhouse area parking lot. Let me see if I can go back here on my presentation. For some reason, it's giving me fits. I can show you. So the Blanco River runs here, obviously. It's flooded all here. This area here was actually outside of the impacted area.
So that community, the dense community just to the south, did not flood?
Lori would have to provide that response for me, but I do believe that it did experience some flooding. I'm just not sure how significant that was.
So
the Blanco River Village did not flood during the 2015 floods.
Thank you, Lori.
I know Bogey Drive did suffer some severe impact from those floods. I think the homes had 6 feet of water in them.
That's correct.
What was the total ask on this project again?
10.5.
10.5. And then the potential, the 2.8 million coming out of the CDBG DR funds. would that 2.8 then be deducted from the ask if the council approved that? And when would the council have the opportunity to approve that?
I really don't know how to answer your question because the council hasn't discussed it. So until they actually discuss it, I wouldn't be able to really commit anything at that point.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Looks like the
10,
go ahead.
is the 10 million the full cost of the acquisition and master planning process?
Yes, ma'am. As we know it, it would probably be honestly less. So we could obviously do with less. But right now we understand we're still in negotiations. So I really don't want to provide a purchase price in this venue right now because we don't have a contract just yet. But we could do with less. We anticipate a master plan could cost us anywhere probably around $250,000 to $300,000. It just depends on how extensive it is.
Does the landowner own anything on the opposite side of the river? Because it looks like the density for the city's housing is largely on the opposite side of the river, and connectivity to those residents to this potential park would be, obviously desirable. Is there any access from the other side?
No, sir. The river divides what you're seeing as platted here. My understanding is that I think those are on the market. I don't know that there's actual development there yet.
Jamie, would all of this property be accessible to the public?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
It's a great opportunity. Other questions, POSAC members? All right, hearing none, thank you. James, our next presentation.
That is going to be me as well.
Oh, Jamie, thank you. Okay.
Take two here. So let me, and I do have, and I failed to introduce them earlier, and I sincerely apologize. They'll probably, fuss at me later. But Drew Wells, my Director of Parks and Recreation, is also on the meeting tonight, as well as Bert Strodeman, our Parks Operations Manager. So if for some reason I cannot answer any of your questions on this next one, they're going to step in and pitch hit for me. Pun intended. So this project is our Gary Sportsplex Complex renovations. As you could see in the previous presentation, this actually sits just across the street from our previous presentation. We are currently underway of phase 1 of this project, and I will get into more of that in just a second. So I need to, there we go. Sorry, my video is here. Okay, so the purpose and need for this project is the Gary Softball Complex is a 42-acre recreational facility managed by our department. The complex has 2 facilities built in different stages. The first facility was built in 1983, and the second facility was built in 2012. Both facilities in the complex have 3 softball diamonds and other amenities for visitors, such as bleachers, concessions, restrooms, and picnic tables. And each facility within the Gary Sports Complex contains its own set of utilities, such as irrigation systems, light poles, breaker boxes, and water valves. The discrepancies between the newer and the outdated facilities is a big driver for the City of San Marcos's request. And here is an aerial view of the project location, where we are right over here. And here is another aerial view for you. This is the proposed project area right here. This is the older complex that was constructed in 1983. And this is the newer project that was constructed in 2012. Okay, so as I was mentioning before, we are currently in phase 1 of our renovations project. Those renovations include roadway improvements, getting the road out of the floodway there. There is a creek that runs across the roadway, so we're going to raise that roadway up out of that water, as well as doing some light improvements. The installation of those will actually begin on September 1. We're super excited to get those installed. We will also begin some other additional infrastructure improvements. So this particular project, like I mentioned, this is the second phase. We have already invested $1.8 million in that first phase. We are requesting an additional 1.8 that would be used for constructing the following improvements: additional parking, redesign and replacement of bleachers, the concession stand, and providing ADA accessibility within our concourse and restroom facilities. The anticipated schedule following funding issuance, we would finalize design documents within 6 months, procurement of construction within 6 months, and then construction would be complete within 12 months. And I guess I would like to also include that this the softball complex does see, it provides, our youth softball recreation activities. We have lots of adult programs out here as well. And we also facilitate upwards of 36 tournaments during a non-COVID year. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Members, questions for Jamie?
In, I guess, kind of conjunction with another presentation from SMCISD, if a park does go up, between Goodnight and Bonham, there are not going to be those baseball fields anymore there. But, I see lots of families, out there practicing for softball and baseball. Would these fields be open for families to continue to be able to, go in and practice kind of at their leisure?
Right now, they are not open for that kind of play. It is done by a reservation or through our own, our own programs that we provide.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Jamie Lee. Appreciate your presentations.
Thank y'all so much, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
It's great to see y'all.
So that ends our project presentations. James, do you have an update on our application status?
So we've obviously the application period ended. The next meeting will be September 8th. That's Wednesday, September 8th. And we're trying to get all the remaining presentations in on that meeting. And so just warning you now, we've been doing about 6 the last few. There's going to be 9 for the next meeting.
Is there any way, I don't know about everyone else's tolerance for that, but it's 8 o'clock right now almost. It's tough to hang in that long.
So there's the city of Kyle has 3, and then the remaining are all individuals, which
I'd personally be inclined to have them extend to the next meeting. And it's in fairness to the presenters as well, I think, so that they get they're really the due that that they should, so that everyone is able to concentrate on their presentations and really hear it out.
Okay.
I don't
I'll
know
reach out.
if what other people think. Blanca, I saw you nodding yes. But
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that statement. I think it would really allow us to be present, and when they're giving their presentations. I mean, I think that's something that's really important. I think, the time of everybody who is involved in the meetings and who is here, from the public, is also something that we need to take into consideration. My only question is, would this, give us I think we were up to 15 meetings. Would this mean that we would be at 16 meetings? And are we okay with going that far? I personally am okay with having another meeting so that we can break things up a little bit more. But, I don't know how the other members of the commission feel.
From a scheduling standpoint, I don't think it's going to increase the number of meetings at all. I mean, we've got them booked out through the end of the year, and so
it really kind of depends on how long it takes us to score the projects.
Okay. Then I would be willing to say, maybe City of Kyle could have their own day for presentations, and we could have those other 6, on one meeting, because that does sound, we would be going into at least 9 o'clock if we had all of those meetings at one time.
I agree. Let's break them up.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, I'll reach out to the groups that are scheduled, and I think there's some that would probably welcome an extension. So we'll see what that looks like.
Super. Any other project updates?
No, not at this time. And then, so after the 8th, it would be to the 21st, September 21st.
Oh, great. I have one thing. I know, Mark, you're still on the Zoom, I hope. I had a meeting with Commissioner Shell this week, and one of the topics that we discussed, which I think is important for POSAC as we get into the process of scoring, is the question of the value that we should place on potential golden cheek warbler habitat for any of the properties. We've got several that have potential golden cheek warbler habitat, Purgatory Nature Preserve, the Old Glory, the Blanco Bend, and maybe others. And how POSAC treats the potential funds that may come back to the county for those warbler habitats. And the question that we were asking ourselves in that meeting is whether or not any funding that comes back to the county from the sale of mitigation credits would actually be restricted to providing additional parkland, or which could be open space for more habitat. It was something the commissioner didn't have the answer to, that maybe it would be good to help us know a little bit more in a future meeting so that we can potentially figure out what kind of credit from a leverage standpoint we should provide those projects, because several of these don't have any other leverage associated with them. And their claim is, well, part of that leverage would be golden cheek warbler habitat credit sales in the future. And I don't know if we should count that as if there's a potential of 3 million in sales, we value that at 3 million leverage, or do we value that at 50% of that? It's just something I think that would be helpful, since we've got a few projects that that's a key part of the leverage that they're discussing bringing to the table.
So I'll tell you that as a matter of policy, the Commissioners Court has always rolled the mitigation funds that we receive from sale of the mitigation credits back into the program. So it would it would lead to the acquisition of habitat for the next round of mitigation credits. The difficulty you'll have in assessing a project early on is that there is some speculation. It's a good educated guess, but it's still a bit of a guess as to how many acres of credit we would receive on any given project. I see Jenny is still on. We usually get a pretty good read using Lair Wildlife for what we believe will be the credits that they're allowed on the project, but then ultimately Fish gets to give that a thumbs up. So there's a process there. We could probably get well in the ballpark and pretty darn close to assessing what that would be. And I don't think that your scoring criteria really fits very easily with this, but I do think that you could call it match. If we're calling, and we can describe the match in each project in different ways. I mean, sometimes the match comes in the form of a bargain sale, and sometimes it comes in the form of monies that are coming from another entity. So we know the value of those by looking at the type of match we're receiving. I think here we could say it's 3,500 per acre that we would receive back in the sale of mitigation credits over time, and that's if the program doesn't change. So I hope that answers your question somewhat. We can get into more detail in a future meeting if you all want to discuss it further.
I think if other members aren't as familiar with this program, then it would be good to discuss it, just so we understand how we should be looking at the potential match that's being claimed for some of these golden cheek warbler lands.
No problem. I think between Ginny and Alexandra and I, we can probably answer any questions and come up with a short presentation that would give you all enough working knowledge of the program. So we'll get with James and try to schedule that.
Okay, so Scott and members of the POSAC, is it so schedule preference, would it be to get through presentations, or if this will fit in the future and the next meeting, try to do that as well?
Perhaps the next meeting or the one after that. You know, really it needs to be answered before we get into scoring, so that everyone understands how we should treat these claims of dollars that would come back to the county that, you know, are we don't know for sure. It's not like someone is handing out the match at the time of the county's purchase of an easement or purchase of land. It's something that happens in the future, and how the calculation is made, and so that we can verify it, I think is important.
So the reason I ask is because I'm going to reach out to the 9, well, it's 6 different groups. And let's say the majority wants to go to the 21st. Would it be okay to have that conversation on the next meeting? Or are you wanting to have the conversation or get the presentations done before you?
It's fluid. It's what works best for everyone.
Okay. All right.
If I may suggest, we could have something prepared and on the agenda for the next meeting. And if it runs too, and just have it on the back end of the agenda. And if it looks like it's running too long, we can just pull it and push it to the next meeting after, if that works for everyone.
I'm good with that.
And by the way, one thing I would advocate is, while it's been policy to put that money back in, I don't think that it's required. I'd love to see our court actually put that down and as a requirement. I don't know if that's possible, but something would be interesting to get to know whether or not they would do that, and if it's even possible. I don't know if it's possible the way the county works.
It's so there's a committing future courts issue there that we run into, but I do believe this is a written policy, and I'll have to go back and dig it up. But we'll have that as part of the presentation.
Great, thanks. Members, anything else you'd like to?
Scott, what do you mean by the money side of that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What do you mean by the money side of that?
Well, while it's been
Your
the
comment,
policy,
your comment.
while it's been the policy that those funds go back into further mitigation lands, I've heard that it may not be a legal requirement, that the court has bound themselves to have that money go back into mitigation lands. And I would love to see the court commit the funding so that we know for sure that if there's sale of mitigation credits for many of the lands that we're suggesting funding for, that's a true match. If there's, a potential of $4 million of golden cheek warbler habitat credits for sale from that land, that we know that in the future, the county is going to be able to use that $4 million and will be committed to using that $4 million to purchase further open space mitigation lands.
Yeah, I understand. And even though that has been a stated policy of the court, I'll tell you that the real problem we run into is that the value of acreage in Hays County, now everywhere in Hays County, has made it so that the program can't really perpetuate itself at 7,500 per mitigation credit, per acre mitigation credit, because you just can't turn around and acquire additional acreage without supplementing that fund somehow through other sources. So, I think the policy really doesn't even get you there to a program that can just continue to roll and extend without some help.
Thank you.
Members, other discussion items you'd like to bring up for future meetings? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Talk to you in a couple weeks.